Hello, my name is Storm Glore. Amplify Music Communities is a global continuation of the Amplify Music Conference, in which we take a journey around the world with leaders within music ecosystems of various cities, states, regions, and countries. In our sessions, we'll hear what's happening at the ground level from leaders in these communities. We'd like to thank our sponsor of this particular episode, Bandzoogle, as we go down under to visit with leaders from the sixth largest music market in the world, Australia. We're lucky to have with us in this conversation three recognized leaders in the Australian music ecosystem.
Hi, my name's Leanne de Souza. I'm a co-owner of Nightlife Music. This is being recorded from Brisbane, Australia, which is Meanjin, on the lands of the Turrbal and Yagara people, who are our First Nations people in Australia. And being a colony, their sovereignty has never been ceded.
Hi, I'm Emily Collins. I'm the Managing Director of Music New South Wales. I'm coming to you from Sydney, Australia, which is on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation.
Hi, my name is Joe Hay. I'm a creative change consultant coming to you from Adelaide, South Australia, which is the lands of the Kaurna people. We recognise their connection to the land, past and present.
Thank you for those introductions and acknowledgements. Emily, welcome. And I'd like to start by asking you, what area of the music industry do you work in? And within that role, what do you expect to be your biggest challenges going forward?
Thanks for having me, Storm. So the area that I work in specifically is I run the state music body for contemporary music in New South Wales. So we are funded by state government to deliver programs and services for the music community, and we also are one of the key music advocates in the state, representing the industry to government and to other sectors. There are 8 state and territory music bodies across Australia, so we're just one of them. It's a really great network. In terms of challenges moving forward, was that the question?
Yes. In this new normal.
The new normal. Well, I think one of the things, we work with a lot of early career artists and industry, and I think one of the biggest challenges is just the absolute disruption to normal career pathways. And I think if you're an early career artist or an early career industry professional looking at the music industry, both domestically and internationally at the moment, it's really hard to sort of, plot out a clear pathway for career development. So I think that's going to be one of the big challenges we face as we try to, discover what still, is relevant from the old world, and what's new and what is changing and what needs to be reevaluated and how that impacts professional development.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Joe, what do you see as the biggest challenges ahead?
I see, going forward, I think it's really getting back to the issues that were there before. I think that, they haven't gone anywhere. I think COVID has really just put a hold on it. If anything, it's probably magnified it, because music is traditionally competing with greater, other forms of entertainment. And with the lockdown, people stop going to see music. It's really about getting them back out and getting, like that whole new normal thing. Leadership, I think, is going to be the big bit. Getting back out at the grassroots level and seeing what's there, and just getting people back out to music. All the things that were there before, except I think it's amplified. Great choice of words there. And it's really how we're going to respond to that. It's the same things. It's government regulations, urban development, gentrification, all the issues that were affecting music beforehand. And exactly what Emily was saying about career pathways and development and supporting the emergence.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. And Leanne, from your role and your perspective, what do you see as your challenges or the challenges ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Storm. Thanks, Emily and Joe. That was interesting. I think answering that, we as a private business in music technology, space. I'm sort of answering it from that. At the moment, I actually feel quite optimistic at a local level. So we're situated in the greater South East Queensland, Brisbane, Gold Coast kind of areas where our headquarters are, but we work nationally. But I think the challenges short term are around our clients. We've got about 5,000 clients in public spaces. So as the rules change, and even though, yes, Australia is open, there's still that precarious nature to short lockdowns that affects whether it's a gym or a bar or a live music venue. But so that's a really short-term challenge for us too. It's really around getting back to the export momentum. You know, we're at that point pre-COVID where an Australian business can export globally in the tech space. So that sort of is all on ice. So that's going to be a challenge. And also like just the sustainability of a workforce, of keeping people employed. You know, you've got to keep that organisational culture, people connected, be able to pay them, all of that. But actually what there's no challenge with is the amount of content. There's more quality content than ever. So I think that's that, you know, the upside in what we do. There is no shortage of great music being made.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate your optimism on that, and it's great hearing from your all's perspectives on that. What I'd like to ask next is, from a community level, your governments, what have they done to boost music in Australia, and do they have anything in motion for next year and beyond? How about Emily? Would you answer that one?
Yeah. So as I said before, I'm based specifically in New South Wales and have had a lot to do with the New South Wales government in terms of looking for ways to support the contemporary music industry both through the pandemic and looking forward to the next couple of years. And, you know, we've just had one of the largest investments into contemporary music ever. Be sort of announced in the last 2 months, which is $24 million of live music funding specifically for live music venues, which is incredibly much needed and very, I guess, you know, it's a great sign of good things to come from this government in terms of understanding the role that contemporary music has to play in nighttime economies and in employment and jobs and, community well-being. So, yeah, that particular investment has been really significant. There's also been other state investment into, program subsidising, so supporting artists and people putting on shows to do that by providing funding. There's been a lot of regulatory change as well. A big suite of Liquor Act amendments went through late last year, which is about making it easier for the live music industry to do business by removing some of those regulatory challenges we had, which has been fantastic. And I think, you know, looking forward, there's just really great ongoing conversations with the state government about, you know, various opportunities to support what is, you know, one of the largest music industries in Australia, and just the real potential that New South Wales has nationally and internationally to be a real leader. So, yeah, there's some really exciting conversations happening there.
Mm-hmm. And Joe, from your community level government perspective.
From my community level government perspective, yes. There was the federal, through the federal government and various state governments, as Emily and Leanne can talk about, the government has been putting funding out there for live music venues and through JobKeeper, and, you know, for those musicians that could actually access those those funding streams. It's been there. We've heard some good responses from Tasmania to take up with some of the federal live music funding, where their Music Tasmania is working with the venues to get them to actually apply for funding and to, you know, help them out through the lockdowns and the downtime. So I think going forward, I think it is going to be a very community focused, what the state governments will be able to do. It's fantastic to see the turnaround in New South Wales. They've come from a pretty dark place, and not just from COVID. The work that Emily was doing and everyone else doing in New South Wales is so important. It is one of the biggest cities, and from not to have a live music scene, it's just beyond belief. But going forward, it is really going to be those local councils and state governments working very specifically on the problems in those areas. There's a real large focus for regional touring at the moment, and it's exciting to see some of the programs that are coming out to actually develop that in Victoria. Some some good responses to a regional touring program that's just happened there. So it's, as always with these things, it's great to have the big broad strokes of funding, but at the same time, if they're not landing in the specific areas, and I think Leanne, coming from the business side of things, can talk about that as well, probably, if they're not really hitting those targets and what the people on the ground are actually saying, then it's just going to be a waste of funding, basically. So I think that's as always, I think that's the hope going forward.
I see. And Leanne, what have you seen?
Really, similar to Emily, but in the north, the Queensland government put their money into venues to sort of support venues with programming. I think, there could always be more. They just announced a bit more, but it's good to see that starting to get in the pocket of artists. There's also been an investment by the Queensland government in regional artists and capacity building. Some of those programs, yet to see what they mean long term, but they're there. I think, too, we're in an interesting position because Brisbane City Council, it's actually the largest state government in the world as a bureaucracy. Wow. So it works very closely, Brisbane City Council with the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, so for the whole region. So there's actually a little bit of some good conversations around what a 10-year plan right across creative industries, not just music. So, but whether that, it's not just a funding program. So going forward, a lot of the advocacy up here is really around procurement. So if the Queensland government and the council can actually, when it comes to music, performances, venues, all of the procurement stuff of state government, the amount of money they spend, and particularly it looks like the Olympic Games bid is successful, so 2032. So that's from how can we get as much government money staying in Queensland back into the creatives' pockets as possible is sort of where we're at. But, yeah, on the business side, the federal government's JobKeeper, what Joe alluded to, that helped prop up jobs and employment. We were a real beneficiary of that. It actually served us and how it was intended. But whether that actually with the really, the in the live sector and the small businesses that need that coming through, without that income, I don't think we've seen what that really means for small business closures for a few months yet. But that's sort of my perspectives.
Yes. And you mentioned 2032. And speaking of, I'm going to ask you to look ahead now and think about and share with us what do you think will be the successes that will make the biggest difference in Australia's music economy in the coming years? Emily, what are your thoughts on that? What will be the successes, you think?
That's a really tough one.
I know.
I mean, look, I think, like Leanne said, there's no shortage of talent, and I think Australia has an incredible advantage at the moment to really support and not propagate or proliferate, but one of those words that make sure that Australian talent is not just like becoming more of a mainstay within Australia as the content that we consume, but also internationally. And I think the success that we're looking for is to really see viable, sustainable, ongoing careers for artists, and that's what we're all, I guess, working towards. Yeah, and that's what keeps me going, and that's what I think we're all banking on.
Okay, and Joe, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'd probably make a joke and say, get a few more massive international acts, which again, I totally agree with Emily and Leanne. We're not lacking at all in talent from Australia. We're constantly every other day there's another fantastic band. I think for me, it's just being in this industry is so exciting. It is that constant surprise. It is that constant new discovery. It's probably wrong, but I'm waiting to see what comes out of the whole lockdown. For the kids out there having illegal parties, were they developing new scenes, or were they, where is it? What's coming? I mean, I know I'm getting old because I'm totally disconnected to kids going off having wild time, which is wrong, but yeah, it's what they're for. So I'm really excited about the future. I think it's going to be we talk about mechanisms and levers and things governments can do to improve things. That the best thing is really just get out of the way and just say yes a lot more and allow things to happen. I can't wait to see what the kids have been up to while we're all locked down and making sourdough. You know, like, where is it coming? Because it can all be done in your room now. So, you know, I live in hope.
All right. Oh, we will always live in hope. Yes. Absolutely. And Leanne, what do you see as the successes in the future?
I've sort of answered this as sort of, I was thinking more about the trends of what we're sort of seeing, this edge of optimism on the horizon. One thing, and this is not based on any research, but completely anecdotally, because I'm in Brisbane, I mean, I went to see the Middle Kids at the concert hall last night to a full house. Like, we're sort of at this, we're one of the only concert hall theatre spaces in the world that is at capacity. They're doing contemporary music, so it's kind of weird. But what I think is seeing is that old economic supply and demand has increased ticket prices for domestic artists. So anecdotally, both as a consumer and talking to managers and promoters, I mean, punters are happily paying 20 or 30% more in a ticket price than they were pre-COVID. So, if that becomes that we've added some value to that live experience because it was taken away, that'll be really interesting. And if managers and booking agents, et cetera, can hold their own on the pricing, I think that will be a trend. The second one is that, and it was actually picked up this week also in one of Mark Mulligan's pieces, I think, but the fitness sector. So in gyms and wellness, the amount of music and the importance of music and community in the health and wellbeing sector is actually really growing, whether it's through the tech bits or the community that's building around that. And music's really integral in fitness in so many different ways. I reckon that's a big growth. The third thing that's quite niche to what we do, but it's by no means an Australia-only problem, but actually having data agreements with the PRO so that actual accurate distribution of royalties back to the right pockets. I think that is a massive trend and it's happening. A lot of progress has been made in Australia in our business and our sector with the PROs while COVID's been happening. So I think that trend of both getting money from songs and sound recordings back into the pockets of the right people, and, if we can keep as much of that in Australia, to be a little selfish about it, not send it all over to the big names, would be good. And the fourth thing that I touched on before, but around government procurement, and I think that will be really important that we back Australian-made content. And then finally, too, I think it comes back to what Joe and Emily, there's no shortage of content, but also artists are no longer, yes, they can make music, but we're seeing them also be screen artists, visual artists, this sort of real convergence of the creativity. I think that's cool. It's not just going to be, songwriters. There's a whole spectrum now of what creativity looks like and how that screen-based flip of COVID is affecting the creative process. So it's sort of where my head was.
Yeah. Well, I hope that all of these predictions and things we see ahead happen. Yes, we will cross our fingers for sure. Well, let's talk specifically about the artists in your country. Several of you all have mentioned that, you all have a plethora of great artists, wonderful talent there. And how are they faring? What programs or initiatives have been supporting them to be resilient in all this? Emily, would you share any that you know of?
Yeah. Look, there are some really interesting programs happening across Australia. I mean, we just got funding from the state government to employ 7 regional music officers, which are basically employees of my organisation who live and work remotely across New South Wales, which is a huge geographical landmass. And so, having people on the ground to provide the kind of support that my organisation does, which is like resources, advice around funding, connections to other people within the industry, capacity building, and, skill development, having those employees on the ground for us is game changing. We're normally a 3-person organisation based in Sydney. And so now that we've been able to extend our offering across the state, we're really looking to see, a great capacity building for regional artists who are already, doing amazing things, but just need, a bit of a help, like everyone. So yeah, I think that's one program we're really proud of. Oh gosh, there's so many interesting things happening. Yeah, I'm sure Joe and Leanne can speak
Yeah,
in more detail. But yeah,
Joe,
the resilience piece is it's really hard. And, you know, I think one of the things I want to say is that funding comes at a cost as well for artists. And, you know, often they're expected to put in funding applications. And we are lucky in Australia to have quite a, you know, a lot of investment in you know, music or, you know, music and arts industries. But it's often very difficult for independent artists to do that kind of work. And I think there's a lot of work been going on around supporting artists to better access those grant programs, because there's what people are sort of referring to as, you know, grant trauma, you know, having so many funding rounds going around, everyone putting in applications because they're all broke, and getting to this point where they get rejection after rejection after rejection because there's just such a huge demand. And I think, you know, that's one thing I'm really keen to make sure we keep doing as an organisation, supporting artists to access that kind of support.
Okay. And Joe and Leanne, any other programs that you want to mention?
Oh, Joe, do you want me to? I think listening, I mean, Em covered some of the
We'll probably cross over.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, two things. I mean, one, we have a National Artist Benevolent Association that called Support Act, and I think the federal government have funneled a lot of money there to get out rapid, you know, $2,000 grants here and there, and support some of the health and wellbeing training and support for artists. And there's a counselling hotline, that type of practical support. But then I sort of look on the other side at, you know, when you think about artists just in our local community, I think even though, yes, Australia is opening up and it's feeling a bit, you know, back to normal, whatever that is, I still think there's that deep grief and trauma. Like, we had a music awards night here last week, and just artists haven't actually been in spaces with other artists. So there's actually a lot of, you know, healing and talking to each other. And I'm a massive, as Emily knows, I mean, I'm a big champion of peer support. So I just think, I don't feel like there's enough mechanisms at the moment yet for artist to artist conversations and discussing and sharing that experience in order to kind of align what's the expectations of what it is to be now an artist. I feel, again, it's a really precarious, and without creating spaces for artists to have conversations and share experiences, we're not sure. And not just about co-writing or some sort of creative collaboration. It's actually a human sharing of what's just been through, and out of that, of how we really support the artists rather than sort of trying to design what we think they need. I don't think artists themselves can articulate what they need yet. So it's a bit of a watch this space for me.
Mm-hmm. Joe, anything to add?
Well, just following on, but just in total support. I think the thing that's been really, really good to watch over the last 5, 6, 10 years is the development of an understanding of you know, mental health and community and looking out for each other, and, you know, ending really bad behaviour and, you know, unacceptable behaviour across the sector. I think it's so nice to hear the event, Leanne, in Brisbane. I'm very jealous. I think everyone's sort of feeling, you know, again, it's a massive feeling of isolation. And as touring and all that sort of stuff starts to happen again, everyone's getting out. I went and saw a gig at a very small venue the other night, and you're right, the artists were really excited to see each other. It was, you know, just realise how locked off you get from everybody, especially when you're not able to go out and do what you love, which is like performing live music or whatever, really. So once we can get back to, you know, the conferences and the you know, the larger festivals where everyone gets to mix again, people begin to feel that they're not alone, that they're not, you know, sitting in their room by themselves, feeling this is the only person in the world. I'm sure people don't. It's probably not that simple, but I don't know. That's really nice. It was so nice to hear, Leanne, like that feeling. It's nice anyway when you get a group of artists and a group of, you know, professionals in a room who, you know, share a common experience. But no, it's definitely something that it's definitely going to be a plus. One of the upsides of coming back and getting, like you say, back to a new normal. In South Australia, we have a thing, they call it Umbrella Festival, and it was sort of developed to sort of activate a particular time of year in South Australia. But the heart of it was getting venues and artists to think about what performance is and what their show is, and getting them to experiment. So giving them the space and permission to experiment. But it was also giving permission to audiences who traditionally haven't gone to see music for a long time or wouldn't have gone to see live music, to go and try things out. Now, that's a very Adelaide culturally specific thing, because we also have a few other really successful open access festivals, and it just seems to be culturally something that really works here. But with that sort of event coming up, I think it's been delayed here this year, but we're getting people to go back out again and share ideas and share experiences and encourage people to get back out again. Is definitely going to be a way of sort of helping people come back, helping people feel like they're not alone in this process, basically.
I see. And it sounds like you all have a lot of great programs happening and in play. But I appreciate that you all also mentioned, existing issues that still need to be addressed. And that's part of it too. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. Well, that brings our conversation to a close for now. And I absolutely want to thank all of you, Joe, Leanne, Emily. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights. Very much appreciated. I also want to thank our sponsor, Bandzoogle. Check them out at bandzoogle.com. And that concludes this session. Thank you for checking out this edition of Amplify Music Communities. You can learn more by going to amplifymusic.org/communities. Subscribe to our podcast feed for more episodes, and thank you.